When the guillotine was first conceived, it was not imagined as an instrument of horror, but as a triumph of reason. In the early days of the French Revolution, reformers dreamed of a justice that would be swift, impartial, and humane, free from the torture and spectacle that had defined executions for centuries. The guillotine was meant to symbolize progress, the victory of enlightenment over cruelty. Yet within a few short years, the very machine designed to civilize death became its most efficient servant. What began as a gesture of mercy would soon become the beating heart of the Reign of Terror. Before the Revolution, executions in France were messy, unequal affairs. Nobles were beheaded with swords, a privilege of rank, while commoners were hanged, burned, or broken on the wheel. The disparity offended the new spirit of liberty and equality sweeping the nation. It was Joseph Ignace Guillotine, a physician and deputy to the National Assembly, who proposed a mechanical solution in 1789, a device that would kill instantly and identically, regardless of social class. The mechanism falls like lightning, he promised, and the head is gone in the twinkling of an eye. The idea was simple: equality even in death. The machine itself was engineered by Dr. Antoine Louis and built by a German craftsman named Tobias Schmidt. Its design was coldly elegant: a tall wooden frame, a sharp angled blade weighted with lead, and a lunette that held the neck in place. When released, the blade fell with unstoppable precision. It was swift, clean, and, at least in theory, merciful. The guillotine embodied the rational spirit of the age, the same intellect that sought to reform laws, abolish torture, and build a just society. For a brief moment, it was hailed as a symbol of humanity. But in revolutionary France, ideals rarely stayed pure for long. When the revolution turned violent, the guillotine was waiting. Its efficiency made it indispensable to a government that believed in purging enemies swiftly and publicly. By 1792, it stood permanently in the Place de la Révolution in Paris. Crowds gathered to watch as the blade fell for the first time, severing the head of a petty criminal named Nicolas Pelletier. The crowd was curious, not horrified. They applauded its speed, its precision, its lack of messy struggle. The new republic had found its perfect instrument: clean, mechanical, impartial, and terrifyingly efficient. Soon, the guillotine's promise of reason gave way to ritualized blood. During the Reign of Terror from 1793 to 1794, it became an unrelenting engine of death. Nobles, priests, peasants, and revolutionaries alike marched to its platform. The ideal of equality was fulfilled only in destruction. Everyone died the same way, beneath the same blade. The streets ran red while the air filled with the sound of drums and the rhythmic thud of the blade. Guillotine's dream of humane justice had become the state's most powerful weapon. The guillotine transformed Paris into a city under siege by its own ideals. Executions were no longer moments of moral reflection. They were production. The machine could decapitate dozens in a single day, its operators working with chilling regularity. The scaffold became a stage, and death became bureaucracy. Officials recorded names, dates, and numbers as though processing documents rather than lives. What had been conceived as Enlightenment's triumph became a factory of death. Each fall of the blade a reminder that reason, when stripped of compassion, can become its own form of madness. The irony was not lost on contemporaries. The same people who had once celebrated the guillotine's creation began to fear its shadow. It spared no one, not the aristocrats it was built to humble, nor the revolutionaries who defended it. Robespierre, Danton, and countless others who had endorsed its use eventually met its steel themselves. In its cold, mechanical impartiality, the guillotine became the revolution's truest reflection: righteous, efficient, and utterly merciless. What had begun as an emblem of equality ended as a machine of terror. The guillotine's fall was not just the fall of heads, it was the collapse of idealism itself. Each drop of the blade echoed the revolution's descent from reason to fanaticism. The same enlightenment that sought to humanize justice had created a device that dehumanized death. Born of idealism, the guillotine would forever stand as the paradox of progress, a tool meant to save humanity that instead revealed how easily humanity can destroy itself. The guillotine was built on a promise: swift, painless death. It was supposed to be the great equalizer, a humane replacement for the blundering swordsman and the choking noose. The blade, it was said, worked with such speed that the condemned felt nothing, the head separated from the body before the nerves could even register pain. For generations, this myth endured. School children were taught that the guillotine was mercy made metal, a triumph of Enlightenment reason over medieval cruelty. But eyewitnesses, doctors, and executioners themselves told a different story. Behind the sharp efficiency lay something deeply unsettling: the possibility that death by guillotine was not instantaneous at all. From the first executions in 1792, people noticed something strange. When the blade fell and the head tumbled into the basket, the eyes sometimes blinked, the lips twitched, the mouths moved as if trying to speak. At first, these movements were dismissed as mechanical reflexes, the final spasms of a dying body. But witnesses swore they saw more than reflex. They saw recognition, awareness. The newly severed heads appeared to respond to their names, to look toward voices, to hold expressions of shock or pain for many. This realization was more horrifying than the act itself, that death might not come at once, that consciousness could linger in the few seconds after the cut. The debate over this gruesome question began almost immediately. Scientists, fascinated and disturbed, turned to experiment. In 1793, the French anatomist Dr. Bourrieu attended an execution and later wrote that he called out the name of the condemned man, Henri Langouille, seconds after decapitation. According to Bourrieu, the eyes opened, fixed upon him, and followed his gaze for nearly 30 seconds before finally dimming. Others reported similar incidents, blinking, grimacing, even attempts to form words. What had been promised as the gentlest of deaths now appeared as a slow descent into silence. A death in two acts where the body died first and the mind followed after. The horror deepened as these observations spread. Philosophers and doctors argued whether such consciousness, if real, could feel pain. Some believed that the shock of decapitation would immediately render the brain unconscious. Others insisted that for a few brief seconds, perhaps as many as 10, awareness persisted, enough time for terror, confusion, and agony to register. The guillotine's blade, once seen as merciful, now seemed almost crueler than the sword it replaced. What could be more horrific than a death so clean that the victim might live long enough to realize they had been killed? Executioners themselves added to the dread. They reported that heads often blushed immediately after decapitation, the sudden rush of blood giving the face an eerie semblance of life. Sometimes lips quivered, tongues moved, and eyes rolled toward the spectators. A few executioners claimed that when slapped or shouted at, the heads reacted. Some insisted they saw expressions of anger or despair flicker across the features, as if the person still knew. Whether these were physiological reactions or the remnants of thought hardly mattered. The impression was enough to unsettle even hardened men. The myth of the guillotine's instant mercy began to crumble. People who once praised its efficiency now whispered that it might prolong suffering rather than end it. The crowds who gathered to cheer the swift fall of the blade began to shudder at the thought of what might be happening inside the baskets. The revolution's promise of humane execution had given way to a new, subtler kind of horror. the fear that the condemned experienced death with their eyes open. Later experiments in the 19th century sought to prove or disprove this possibility. Scientists measured nerve activity in decapitated animals, observing movement and response for several seconds after beheading. Their findings, rather than easing conscience, reinforced the dread conclusion the brain could remain active briefly after separation from the body. If that was true for animals, how much more terrifying for humans, whose final awareness might be one of pain, confusion, or fear. Even today, centuries after the last guillotine fell, the question remains unresolved. What the condemned felt in those final seconds will never be known. But the myth of instant death has long been shattered. The guillotine, once the emblem of enlightenment and mercy, hides a chilling ambiguity at its core. The blade may have been sharp, the motion swift, but time stretches in strange ways at the edge of death. For those who faced it, even a heartbeat of awareness was an eternity. The guillotine was designed to make death efficient, to replace chaos and cruelty with mechanical precision. Yet that very precision transformed it into something even more chilling. A spectacle of routine killing. In the heart of revolutionary France, executions no longer carried the fumbling uncertainty of a swordsman's swing or the grotesque theater of the gallows. Instead, they became performances of rhythm and repetition, a grim choreography where the blade's fall marked the pulse of a nation drunk on its own ideals. The guillotine turned death into machinery, and machinery into entertainment. When the guillotine was first erected in the Place de la Révolution, it drew crowds of unprecedented size. Every execution was an event, a carnival of death. Men, women, and children filled the square hours before the blade was raised, climbing onto rooftops and balconies for a better view. Hawkers sold fruit, wine, and pastries. Vendors offered souvenirs, miniature guillotines, toy blades, or printed lists of the condemned. What should have been a moment of moral reflection became a public festival. The air buzzed with anticipation, not reverence. Death had become routine, and routine had become entertainment. The machinery itself fascinated the crowd. Unlike the clumsy instruments of old justice, the guillotine worked with hypnotic regularity. Its tall frame and gleaming blade stood stark against the sky, a symbol of the new order, rational, efficient, merciless. The executioner and his assistants performed their duties with clockwork precision. One bound the prisoner, another positioned the neck in the lunette, and with a pull of the lever, the blade fell. The heavy thud, followed by a collective gasp, was followed almost immediately by cheers or murmurs. The executioners wiped the blade, reset it, and called for the next name. Death became procedural, as clean and cold as paperwork. During the height of the Reign of Terror, the spectacle took on industrial proportions. In some weeks, dozens were executed each day. Drums rolled as carts of prisoners arrived, the condemned seated together in grim silence while the crowd roared for justice. When the blade fell, a roar of approval followed. Heads were displayed, held aloft by the executioner before being dropped into baskets. Blood pooled on the wooden platform and trickled into the cobblestones below. Yet the spectators rarely turned away. For them, it was theater, the grand stage of revolutionary virtue. Among the crowd were sellers, gamblers, even romantic admirers of death. Some kept diaries noting who died that day. Others compared the bravery or terror of each victim's final moments. Women known as tricoteuses, the knitting women, sat calmly before the scaffold, clicking their needles as heads fell, recording the names of the condemned in silence. They were not monsters. They were citizens participating in the moral rhythm of their time. To watch was to belong. The guillotine unified them through horror, its steel blade a kind of communal heartbeat. As the months wore on, the spectacle became numbing. The same machine, the same motions, The same sound of falling steel repeated until death itself lost its edge. Even those who once wept began to cheer out of habit. Some came not to witness justice, but to feel something: fear, excitement, belonging. The guillotine, once a symbol of reason, had become a ritual of collective catharsis, a way for the public to purge anxiety through shared violence. The authorities encouraged this. Public executions were propaganda, proof that the revolution was cleansing itself of traitors. The guillotine stood at the center of civic life, flanked by banners and soldiers, a monument to justice mechanized. But beneath the slogans and songs lay the reality of spectacle. People no longer questioned guilt or innocence. They came for the rhythm, the repetition, the finality. The machine had become the message. Even after the revolution's fever broke, the guillotine continued to draw crowds. In the 19th century, its use persisted, sometimes in courtyards, sometimes still in the open. People watched as calmly as they once watched theater. The fascination never faded. Newspapers printed detailed accounts of each execution, describing how the condemned looked, how they spoke, how cleanly the blade fell. Death by guillotine had become part of culture, part of its spectacle. The machine that had promised humane justice ultimately created a new form of cruelty: detachment. It stripped death of intimacy, turning the act of killing into procedure. Each execution was quick, clinical, and easily repeated. The guillotine's efficiency made it easy to forget that each name called, each head fallen, was a life erased. Its spectacle did not fade when the crowds dispersed. It lingered in memory, in the chilling realization that humanity can find comfort, even pleasure, in the rhythm of the blade. The guillotine was born from the revolutionary dream of equality. In a France divided by class and privilege, it promised to erase the distinctions that had long defined life and death. No longer would nobles enjoy clean, swift beheadings by sword while commoners hung gasping on the gallows or burned in public squares. The guillotine would treat all men the same. Its blade, sharp and impartial, would fall without regard to rank, wealth, or title. It was, at least in theory, the embodiment of justice made equal. But in practice, this equality was cruel, cold, and devastatingly ironic. For centuries before the revolution, execution had been a reflection of hierarchy. A nobleman's blood was thought too rare to spill in public disgrace. A peasant's life too cheap to end quickly. The revolution sought to overturn that system. The guillotine's advocates claimed that in its uniformity lay moral virtue, that by dying the same death, the rich and poor would stand as equals before the Republic. The blade makes no distinction, proclaimed the Jacobins. The law is blind, and so it was. But in the blindness of the law, something essential was lost: the individuality of every human life. When the reign of terror began, equality before the guillotine took on a grim literalness. The same cart carried aristocrats and farmers to their deaths. Once, opulent nobles rode alongside shoemakers, servants, and even the revolutionaries who had condemned others weeks before. Titles meant nothing now. Even kings fell to the same blade that claimed beggars. Louis XVI was executed before a roaring crowd, his head raised high by the executioner to the chant of "Vive le roi, vive public." Months later, his wife Marie Antoinette followed. Their deaths were not only punishment but symbols, proof that the revolution had made good on its promise to level society, if only through death. Yet this equality was brutal and empty. The guillotine offered no dignity, no nuance, no acknowledgement of the lives that ended beneath it. In its cold impartiality, it stripped humanity from justice itself. Each person became merely the next name, the next body, the next head to fall. The crowd no longer distinguished between them. Death became anonymous, mechanical, democratic only in its indifference. The same blade that had liberated France from feudal cruelty now enforced a new tyranny, one of numbers, lists, and quotas. Revolutionary tribunals fed the machine with ruthless efficiency. Accusations came easily. Trials were brief, often perfunctory. Guilt was assumed. The condemned marched to the guillotine by the dozens, their individuality erased beneath the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity. Even language turned cold. Officials spoke not of executions, but of deliveries. Clerks logged the fallen as though processing shipments. Equality had become arithmetic. And yet the irony deepened further. Though all were meant to die the same, even the guillotine reflected subtle inequalities. The wealthy sometimes bribed guards for small mercies. A cleaner blade, a smoother passage, a final letter delivered to family. The poor had no such luxury. Their deaths were often rougher, rushed, forgotten. Even in the shadow of the guillotine's frame, privilege found ways to endure. The revolution had abolished aristocracy, but not the cruelty of disparity. For the victims, equality meant obliteration. The guillotine reduced life to its simplest equation: one head, one fall. It cared nothing for innocence or guilt, bravery or fear. Women like Olympe de Gouges, who had fought for women's rights, died under the same steel as conspirators and traitors. Old men, children, priests, poets, all fed the machine that claimed to serve justice. Equality under the guillotine was not moral fairness. It was uniform annihilation. Observers of the time began to grasp this paradox. Some whispered that the revolution had achieved equality only in death, that freedom itself had been devoured by the blade meant to defend it. The philosopher Condorcet, once an ally of the Republic, lamented from hiding that reason had become as cruel as monarchy. When he was later captured, he took poison rather than face the guillotine. Even among its architects, the illusion of fairness crumbled beneath the weight of blood. The guillotine's promise of equality revealed a truth that haunted Europe long after the revolution ended: that when justice loses humanity, equality becomes cruelty. The machine that killed kings and peasants alike did not elevate the common man. It reduced everyone to the same helpless victim beneath its blade. What began as a symbol of liberation became an emblem of conformity, a reminder that true equality cannot be measured by the sameness of death, but by the value of life. When the French Revolution ended, many expected the guillotine to vanish with it, to be remembered as a relic of terror, a grim mistake in the pursuit of liberty. But the machine endured. It survived kings, republics, and empires. It crossed borders and centuries, its shadow falling far beyond the blood-soaked squares of Paris. The guillotine outlived the revolution that birthed it, evolving from a tool of ideology into a permanent symbol of the uneasy marriage between progress and brutality. What had once been the emblem of equality became the most enduring instrument of death in the modern age. After Robespierre's own head fell beneath the blade in 1794, the crowds in the Place de la Révolution did not dismantle the guillotine. They cleaned it, reset it, and prepared it for the next condemned. The reign of terror had ended, but the machine had become too useful to abandon successive governments. Royalist, imperial, republican, each found in the guillotine a perfect solution. Efficient, reliable, and morally sanitized. It required no torture, no spectacle of struggle. The condemned arrived, the blade fell, and the matter was finished. In a nation seeking to appear civilized, the guillotine's mechanical neutrality was its greatest virtue. By the early 19th century, it had become not just France's execution device, but its icon. The guillotine stood for order as much as revolution. Its silhouette as recognizable as the Eiffel Tower would later become. Newspapers printed execution schedules. Crowds still gathered to watch, though the tone had changed. From frenzy to curiosity, Parisians attended beheadings as they might attend theater, whispering critiques of the executioner's form. Vendors sold coffee and pastries near the scaffold. The machine that had once embodied the revolution's fury had now become part of everyday life. Its spread was unstoppable. Other nations, admiring its efficiency, adopted similar devices. Belgium, Germany, and Switzerland built their own guillotines. Even in the colonies, the blade was exported as a symbol of European justice. Wherever it appeared, it carried with it the same contradiction: a tool meant to make killing humane, but whose very precision stripped death of its solemnity. The guillotine turned execution into procedure, the condemned into paperwork. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, the guillotine continued to claim lives quietly but steadily. It was used under Napoleon, under the restored monarchy, under the Second Empire, and the Third Republic. In 1939, the last public guillotining in France took place, drawing thousands of spectators in Versailles. Witnesses described the same mixture of fascination and horror that had marked executions during the Revolution. Even in an age of telephones and automobiles, the guillotine remained a bridge to a darker past, a machine that refused to die. The true measure of its endurance lay not just in its use, but in its symbolism. To some, it represented justice made efficient, proof that modernity could be merciful. To others, it was a reminder of humanity's capacity to turn reason into cruelty. Artists and writers obsessed over it. Victor Hugo condemned it as the sinister altar of our civilization. Charles Dickens, visiting Paris decades after the Revolution, described its presence as an unholy monument still glimmering with the memory of blood. Even when not in use, the guillotine haunted the imagination. A ghost of progress turned executioner. Astonishingly, France continued to use it well into the modern era. The last execution by guillotine took place in 1977, less than 50 years ago. The machine that had debuted in an age of muskets and powdered wigs still functioned in the time of color television and jet travel. Only in 1981, with the official abolition of the death penalty, did the guillotine finally fall silent. For nearly 2 centuries, it had served kings and republics alike, changing flags but never its purpose. Its survival is more than a historical curiosity. It is a warning. The guillotine was born from noble ideals: equality, reason, mercy. Yet it endured because it was useful, because it made killing easy, because it disguised violence as virtue. Its longevity reveals the danger of any system that values efficiency over empathy, order over humanity. The machine that promised progress became the emblem of how progress can betray itself. Today, the guillotine exists only in museums and memory. Its blade gleams behind glass, its wood polished by time, but its legacy remains sharp. It reminds us that cruelty can wear the mask of civilization, and that even the most enlightened societies can mistake precision for compassion. The guillotine was not just a machine of death. It was the mirror of an age, reflecting back its greatest ideals and its darkest truths.